So what is PhD and how do we understand this term exactly? And before doing PhD, how is our thinking about it? And after doing PhD, what is the thinking about it and while doing it? These are the things we are going to focus in general in this video. Now, in general, before doing PhD, what is PhD? Now, first of all, many of us, 90% of us, we don't know what is PhD exactly, what happens in that after joining. Very rarely people know it. Even they attempt to do it, they are not particularly interested to know about PhD. So if you're watching this video, so some may think PhD is just a degree and of 3 years duration, and after doing PhD degree one can get a better job and he can be called with a status of doctor before his name. So all these things may come into his or her mind even before joining PhD. And while doing PhD, the reality of PhD comes out, which means not even first year, from second year onwards, slowly you will understand what are the problems within PhD, and that is when you start losing some interest and many people quit in the middle. And after doing PhD, the problem is you are very casual, not understanding the importance of research and not to dwell upon how to take forward your PhD research. The thesis is forgotten and you are into many other things other than what you are supposed to do throughout your life ahead in your career. So these are the three problems with PhD. And the first problem I'm going to discuss is while doing PhD. That's very important because most of our subscribers here on PhD study tips, they are doing PhD and some are even attempting to do PhD. So for them, I would like to give what is the general understanding of PhD and what is the reality of PhD. Now generally we have the understanding that PhD is just a 3 years of course and you can just finish it within 4 years or maximum 3 to 4 years. That's how our thinking is. Of course, one can think that he can settle down in life with good salary and you can also improve or increase your status in the society. So next, the reality is something different. Now PhD is something that doesn't depend entirely upon you. Remember, again I am telling, PhD is not something that is purely you can do it and you can finish it and you can achieve the goal. It depends upon many other people around you because many decisions that you have to make should be made after some other decisions, which means others have to decide how you have to go, how you have to move in your PhD, and one of them is supervisor. We call it PhD guide. And why PhD guide and supervisor becomes a hero and at the same time a villain to a PhD scholar? Because if a PhD supervisor is not good, she becomes a villain, and PhD supervisor is good, he or she becomes a hero because it depends entirely upon them. And university norms also won't object this, and UGC norms are not framed properly. Even not only UGC norms in India but throughout the world, if you go to Australia, New Zealand or anywhere, US, it all depends upon supervisor in order for you to complete PhD successfully. If supervisor's report is bad, then you have to face so many challenges. Sometimes many people quit, sometimes PhD goes up to 10 years, sometimes it becomes like a big headache to you to even live day by day with such struggle. And that's the great reality. There are many people who can influence your supervisor, and if your impression, the moment you try to make an impression, things would go very much wrong, and you are like what I can say, a frog in the well. So the whole world is something there where you cannot step into the other world. That's the problem about PhD. So what I'm trying to tell is PhD is not something that you can do it. PhD is something that there are many people who have to take decisions about you to complete your PhD. Now, this is the reality. Now, what to do? What is the reality and what to do? The reality you know by now. Now, what to do is you have to be very much careful in the first year itself. If you guess that your supervisor is something wrong or people around your supervisor are wrong, better you quit PhD early than to regret for taking PhD for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, or even quitting at the end. So before happening that, in the first year itself, you realize something going wrong with your supervisor and your supervisor's past life, like past scholars have some complaints about your guide, your supervisor, then even beforehand you are supposed to research, but no new scholar would dare researching about, researching in the sense knowing about PhD supervisors. And that's a big hurdle, that's a big problem. Why many scholars are suffering years and years, and they have to give up finally, leaving entirely all the decisions in the hands of supervisors. So be careful. I'm warning with all that is happening around many researchers in the world, that your supervisor can be your hero, he can be your villain at the same time, and mostly he can be your villain only. So what to do here? You have to understand, you have to guess properly, take right decision to choose right supervisor in the beginning itself. If you feel that something is going wrong within one and a half year, better you change your guide who best suits, who has a good history. History is very important when you choose PhD supervisor. It is not about being good person or bad person. Some good people are very sadistic in heart. Some bad people are very good in mind, good in heart. So don't ask anybody whether this supervisor is good or supervisor is bad. Usually good supervisors are bad. Usually bad supervisors are good in terms of PhD scholars. So what you can do, the best way to understand how to choose a research supervisor is just to see the history of that supervisor, ask previous scholars, last year passed out scholars, researchers, how many people are awarded under him or her. So accordingly you can choose a better supervisor either for the first time or the second time if you want to change your guide, but act early. If you are not acting early, the fate falls upon you and you have to go with what is lying in front of you. So that's how, this is the reality. And once you have a good supervisor, sometimes good supervisors are of two kinds. One is helping supervisor, one is who cannot help at all, everything dumps upon you and you have to do. And there is third one, also typical one, who doesn't allow you to do any research. All 100% research should be done by supervisor himself or herself. These are the three types of supervisors that you face, and you have to understand. It's very difficult because only a scholar knows. The whole university may be thinking good about your supervisor, but only scholar knows what is the depth, what are the, because he lives. That's when people come to know. So that's the reason why many scholars are suffering with supervisors, and sometimes this happens most of the time that a scholar cannot really take decisions early. That's the biggest problem. He thinks, why it will happen to me? I can do it, but by the end of fourth year he will realize that things have gone wrong already, and that is when things will not be so much helpful to you even to move forward. Then this is the reality of PhD. You know, there are other panel members, internal, external, there are many experts that they are allotted for you, and even they are also sometimes may not cooperate along the line of your PhD progress. So that is why be careful. Doing PhD is not just like doing your PG degree 10th class or first standard to 10th class, you study and pass. And the second reality is you have nothing to study in PhD and learn by heart, write exams, but you have research. What is research? Research is something you read some books about your topic and you have to imagine and create your own understanding about the topic and understand some research gaps, research problems, and emptiness in the research, and you fill that emptiness, you fill those gaps with your research, and then write some papers. You have to write a paper of 5,000 words about the topic and publish it in a journal. What is a journal? A journal is a website where it contains so many research papers online. So they are approved by some organizations, like some platforms, reputable platforms like Scopus, SCI, ESCI, and for that reason other approved ones but not so popular. So a Web of Science. So these are quite a few popular platforms. They have websites. Some journals are approved by them. Some journals are approved by them. So that's how you will understand things about research. You have to publish 2 papers, and the problem in publishing is, again, here you can't take any choices. Once you write paper, it has to go from the hands of your supervisor for approval. Your supervisor will tell, I don't like this, I don't like this passage, I don't like this source, I don't like this reference, change the reference, change the source, change this paragraph, change that line, this line. All types of headache your supervisor will give while writing your research paper. So it is completely a one-side show. So your paper doesn't satisfy PhD supervisor. That's the reason you cannot satisfy in the way that you can. But that's the reason why it is very difficult to publish research papers. And also it's not so easy to publish too, because these platforms, as I just have mentioned, like Scopus, SCI, and Web of Science, and some other approved platforms, they don't easily even publish your paper online because they need high quality paper with good standard. Of course, nowadays with the kind of technology that you have, you can do that, but your supervisor will do something, will mess up with your papers. That's the reason we can't move forward, or any scholar cannot move forward. And another second reality is attending conferences. You go out from your university or college and go somewhere, attend conference, again you publish paper from that line too. And these things are very bitter sometimes. Sometimes things may not go properly in time. That's the reality. So that's why many students suffer even before writing thesis. Writing thesis is another giant task. That's different. But what I'm trying to speak is, PhD is much more difficult. Much more difficult. Not because of studies. Now 10th class, inter degree, you have to study. Difficulty is in studying. But in PhD, difficulty is with psychology. Difficulty is all about your psychology. All about the time. All about the delays that your PhD gives to you. And you're psychologically grilled, you're psychologically doomed, depressed. And that is when the problem comes, because things would go very much wrong sometimes. So that is why you have to be careful whether which supervisor you choose, whether how to research, or whether you need to take part-time or full-time. These things you need to understand clearly and go ahead understanding that PhD is not so easy, but PhD is something that's too difficult to complete because you need to be psychologically strong. If you are not strong, which means you cannot complete PhD. Unless you are strong, you can complete PhD. There are many other ways which are bad, which I don't want to discuss in this video, like offering money or such sort of things are there, but still our thing is not that one. But the reality of PhD is this. Okay, so face it. If you are joining PhD, try to be ready to face these challenges.